Hello, so nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. I'm going to introduce you to us, David Uzzell, incredible chef.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was shocked when my husband showed me your profile. I was like so impressed. There's just an incredible list of experiences and travel and everything that you've done. Wow. So I don't want to repeat the same questions that have already been asked. So I know that that wasn't your plan to become a chef. You were a history major, right?
Yep.
I was. And so you started working as a chef. And then when did you realize, oh, this is what I love. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Well, thank you for asking that question. So, like you mentioned, I started in Gallaudet with a history degree. My goal was to become a teacher, a lawyer, or even a deaf individual working in the government. That would have been a great fit for a history degree. I looked and looked and was so frustrated with the job market. And then a friend said, hey, do you want a job? And at first I said no, because I figured, I could find a different way to earn money and have fun, and I was just kind of figuring out what to do next. And so that first one, working at the food service in the food truck, I realized it's a great job. It's an honest job. You can't hide what happens with the food. You taste it and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite parts of cooking. You cook it and you share it, and then everyone may be talking, but when the plate hits the table and you take that first bite, it becomes quiet, doesn't it? Yes. Deaf usually have their hands full and then they are quiet, and hearing people are the same way. Their mouths are full and then they're quiet and they fall in love with the food. Exactly. That's exactly right. So I have seen that you cook for the president, right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel in that moment? I know that you were with your employer, you worked as a group, cooking. So what were you thinking about during that time?
Well,
It was quite an honor to work at the White House. A lot of the chefs were from different branches of the military on loan to the White House. Oh. There were also local chefs that volunteered their time during the holiday season. Interesting. Yeah. So they all worked a lot, but we all had an internal motivation. We were proud, to keep going and to be able to cook for the President of the United States plus 10,000 other people in 2 weeks. Right. That was incredible. Never would I've imagined in my wildest dreams that would happen. Yeah, I can believe that, because who as an 8, 9, 10-year-old child says, oh, I'm going to cook for the president one day? No, you never hear of that.
no, you really don't.
And it so happened, when you're cooking, you think, oh, I'm just earning money. And then that led to all of these other amazing things. And it's, the website now. Well, you give me the website. Yes, the website is signsofgoodfood.com. Now, is there a sign for that website? Yes. You show it with your hand, signs of good food. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was using the right sign. But you and your fiance created the website. I mean, obviously, there was a huge need in the deaf community. I remember when I was a kid going to the restaurants with my parents and having to order. I could barely reach the counter and barely look over the counter, and I'm trying to tell them what my parents wanted to eat, and we have to poke and or point and all those things. And now I saw you've got an entire map of deaf owned, deaf run, deaf working at the restaurants. Yeah, that's incredible. That's awesome. What made you decide to set up the website?
Well, my fiance and I, we
Enjoy going out to eat. And not only that, we notice that there are different deaf-owned restaurants. Like, for example, in Washington, D.C., or in Fremont or California, or all these different things. But what's missing is the resource to have all that information in one place. Yes, we've spent probably a good 20 or 30 hours looking for our first version of the map. And then we started placing everything, and now we have over 150 different restaurants there on that map. That's incredible. That's awesome. So if there is a deaf-owned restaurant or a deaf-run, or how can they contact you to get set up on your website? That's a great question. They can send us a message on Instagram. We also have a contact form on the map. You click and there's a menu, and you can let us know and we'll add you. And you can also email me. Wonderful. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I know that you worked for, I'm going to spell it wrong. I know I am. Moz. Well, yeah, no, not that one. Like the one for the Michelin's, the where you were getting the stars. Yeah. Yeah. I currently don't work in a Michelin restaurant currently. Oh, okay. I must have misunderstood. No, that's fine. Michelin, like the tire company. Yeah, and I actually wanted to ask you a question about that, because I'm sure many deaf and hearing maybe don't understand a Michelin, what is that with the restaurant? Can you explain a little bit about the Michelin star? What is that? Sure. All right, I'm going to step back a little. You guys know the Michelin as a tire company. You've seen the man, all the different bubbles. Yeah, right. So they were trying to think of how to encourage people to drive more, to wear out their tires, so they could buy our tires. Really? Yep, so they made a guide for restaurants that would show the restaurants that have wonderful food that you could check them out. You could check out all these different restaurants. So that the tire company itself invented the Michelin star to encourage people to go and use their tires and wear them out going back and forth to all these restaurants. Exactly. Incredible. That's amazing. That's smart, right? It kind of puts it all together. And they also were thinking competitively, like, how will we get these restaurants, they're worth going to, so we'll apply a rating to these restaurants. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. Okay, so 1 star, does that mean it's lousy or not good, or what is the range? Oh, well, that's their system. It's a little different from what we're used to. Like on Yelp or Google review, you see 1 to 5 stars, and they calculate the average, and we tend to trust the 3.5 to 4.9 stars. Yeah, that's right. For Michelin, 1 star is a good restaurant with good food. It's worth checking out. 2 stars is the experience is even more amazing. 3 stars, it's the top of the line restaurant. So it's just a 3 star. So 3 is the top. Yeah. Okay. 1 is still incredible. Oh, I can imagine. I don't hear of many. Well, the restaurants that I go to, they don't have any stars, really. So I'm sure 1 star is hard to achieve. Oh, yes, it is. But I'm sure in the bigger cities like New York and Washington, D.C., Chicago, yes, they have those. I'm in a small country town. Yeah, we don't have a lot here. Yeah, and I will also say this, that the Michelin guide is, it's a little bit of a pay to play, because the local travel board will pay the company to add that location to their guide. Oh, so it's like you apply to be in the magazine so people will come. Yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. That makes sense. It's a business, but still, it's an honor to get those stars anyway, right? Oh, yes, very much so. Okay, so Your favorite thing to cook is pizza. I saw that. Deep dish. Yeah, I love the deep dish. Okay, so how did you end up in the Michelin star restaurant world? That seems a lot more fancy and formal than just a regular pizzeria or something, you know? Yeah, it's a huge jump from the food stands. Yeah, it is. So when I started out, I really enjoyed cooking. I enjoyed that. And I remember one night after I got off work, I went into a restaurant that had a bar, and I already knew the bartender because we connected. We were both from Chicago, so I connected with the chef there. And so I went in and had a beer, and I happened to see the chef talking with a guy. He looked kind of like a douchebag, excuse my language. You know, he had the beard and the mustache and the shirt. And I was like, told the bartender, I said, "Who is that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's the chef at a restaurant in Washington, D.C." Oh. So at that time, I was thinking, hey, what do I want to do next? You know, I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. You know, did I want to go back to school and get another degree in, trip planning or transportation, or did I want to go to the fine dining world, or, and so at that moment, that man, he was kind of the bridge to that. So that guy kind of opened the door and helped you realize that you could. Yeah. I looked up his restaurant. I saw pictures of his food, and I was like, that's the kind of food I want to learn to cook. And we sat down and started chatting, exchanged phone numbers, and he asked if I wanted to come and check out his restaurant. He said, just text him. And I was like, okay. So I texted him, and I ended up working at that restaurant for 4 years. I learned a lot. And then I kind of was ready to, take the next step, Are you ready to make that next jump, huh? Yeah, so I went to different restaurants in D.C., building my network. And then, the summer of 2019, my fiance participated in a study abroad program through RIT. Okay, so she lived in Germany for the summer, and she asked me, hey, would you like to join me for the summer? And I'm like, I'd be ignorant to say no to that. Absolutely that. That's a new culture, new experience, new foods, new everything. Yes. So I told my job, hey, I'm gonna go. And they were like, okay, good luck. And I was like, well, if I'm in Europe, why don't I go ahead and try working at a fancy restaurant, I thought. So I reached out to the restaurant by the name of Faviken. Oh, I saw that. Yeah, it's a 2-star Michelin restaurant. It's amazing. I read about it, and the chef there liked to get interns from local restaurants. And not only that, but also tried to help his staff have, work-life balance. Cooking is tough. European countries tend to really have a better work-life balance than America, for sure. Unfortunately, yeah. So I wrote a letter, sent it to him, and I wasn't really expecting anything. And he emailed me back a few days later, and he said, hey, are you interested in coming? And I was like, yep, sure, absolutely. So I worked at that restaurant for 3 months, learning all the different skills. I learned so much. Made some good friends that I'm still in touch with today. And then when my internship was over, I came back to Washington, D.C., and I reached out to another Michelin restaurant here, and I said, hey, I already have experience, and I'd like to continue, kind of strike while the iron's hot. Yeah, almost like, learning on the job, like continue to learn, it's on the job training kind of. Exactly. So I worked at the other restaurant, the minibar restaurant, under Jose Andres for a few months before COVID hit. So when you started working, Okay, I know that you were very were assertive and approached all those chefs, and I know that you're deaf. So what was the first reaction? Were they shocked, or were they like, I know deaf people have so many barriers to work. Oh, yes, we do. You're not the only one. I'm many in every field, yeah, very much so. So how did you manage to sell yourself? Like, be assertive and like, I can do this and that and the other. I know, I hate to say you have to convince the hearing person to, hey, I'm a good employee, please try me out, but how did you manage to do that? So with that first chef in Washington, D.C., it just happened that he happened to have a deaf employee work for him previously, and maybe he knew somebody was deaf, so he was already aware, and we chatted and exchanged. So he was kind of already exposed to the deaf world. Exactly. So he knew that you could. Yes, exactly. And then I just had to continue to prove myself over and over again. Like, I would go to a restaurant to stage, and that is basically like a trial to see if that place is a good fit and if I was a good fit for the team, Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Kind of like a trial run, so to speak. Yes. So I was trying to find that, you got to find that balance. And so I had to show them that I'm deaf, but all you have to do is tell me what to do, and you got it. Then, I started building my resume. I had all this experience. And then next, when I was in Sweden, one of my chefs asked me, like, hey, have you cooked during dinner before? And then I was like, yeah. And he said, well, how? And we had to develop home signs, like, what you have to tell me what the order was, and I'd complete it. Okay, so what are some examples of some home signs? I know those people may not be familiar with it. A lot of hearing people will be watching this video as well, and I'll have a voiceover when this is finished. So can you show us what the home signs that you created were? Sure. Like this sign here was pheasant. Okay. Let's see what else. Squab was this one. Lamb, of course, was like this, and duck. And it just fit the different plates. So this sign is foie gras. Oh, wait a minute. I'm very country. You are going to have to explain to me, what is that? Sure. Foie gras is a liver of a duck. Okay. It's really a terrible practice. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the ducks are typically force-fed with a tube. They don't move. It is a terrible practice. It really is inhumane. So it's kind of like a fancy dish. Yes. And they take this liver out and they cook it, and it becomes very tender and soft and rich. But again, okay, so what does it taste like? That's a good question. It's very versatile. It can go with anything. For example, brioche bun and peach, and you can put that with part of the dish and make a delicious sauce with the peach. Okay, so I know some deaf and hearing people have had wild game or moose or pheasant or things like that. So how does that compare with that flavor? It's more like a chicken liver pate. It's closer to the chicken liver pate taste. Oh, well, that's too fancy for my tongue. Well, again, I don't advocate the practice of animal cruelty, really. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that that's how they make that. Yes, but it's interesting that you came up with, as a deaf individual, it kind of makes sense, because that's the location that your liver is. That's kind of where your liver is. So even the home signs still kind of are connected to sign language in some way. They kind of make sense. Pheasant, like when you're hunting, you're shooting, it's, that kind of makes sense. So that's interesting to see that even if it is a home sign or a gesture, that it's not off the charts, that it's still kind of connected to sign language. That's awesome. Yeah, so I explained that to that chef, and then from there we used the phone, to communicate and discuss in depth about different projects, different assignments. So your English is, at a pretty skilled level to be able to communicate through the phone, because I know sometimes deaf individuals struggle with English. So would you encourage deaf individuals to practice English skills, or? Well, I encourage deaf people to figure out different approaches that work for them. Not just English, it could be gestures, lip reading, which is not effective, writing notes back and forth, as long as there is a way to facilitate communication. Yes, clear communication. You can do a lot with gestures and all of those other things. Really, deaf are amazing in their ability to communicate and adapt and make themselves clear. When I, see it, it makes so much sense, but obviously, my parents are deaf, so I've grown up with it. So it kind of makes sense to me. But, I've been trying to teach my husband some signs, and I told him, if it feels uncomfortable or doesn't seem right, that means you're doing it wrong, because deaf people are not going to make it awkward or harder for themselves. They're not. Yes, it's more natural. Yeah, exactly. It's going to feel natural and comfortable. But anyway, all that aside. So, what else would you like to share? Well, it's not all sunshine and roses. It's because I am deaf in a hearing environment. I have to continue to adapt. I have to focus more on that piece. While hearing, they can listen and focus on their cooking as well. And they have that transfer of knowledge. Like someone may be talking to them and saying, do this, and they're hearing it. Yeah, they're hearing it, so they know, yes. And I'm focused on the project cooking, and I'm missing out on the information. And in a formal restaurant, we would have 2 or 3 different meetings a day to review the day, what we need to focus on, check in, making sure everything's good, who needs help with what project, notes from last night's dinner, what we can improve on. And that's really a different experience than working in like a regular restaurant kitchen. It's totally a different experience. It's more communication, collaboration than just showing up and flipping burgers. Yeah. There's a lot of communication and making sure everybody's on the same page and knowing what to expect daily. And, and all of that is being spoken. And I'm deaf. So, I can't use my phone during the meeting because they'd be like, hey, give me your phone. Why are you on your phone? So I did sit down during a performance review and I said, hey, if you don't mind, can I get a copy of those notes so that I'll know what's going on every day? And they were kind of like, it wasn't a yes, or they were like, oh, you can't really do that, and so it's kind of like they weren't thinking of a solution. They weren't willing. Yeah, they weren't. At the same time, I was like, okay. And so I knew I had to figure something out. And, I'm like, I'll accept that and figure out a way. I had to figure out a way to work my way up. And so, and make this happen. But looking back now, I'm like, wow, I should have pushed back more. Like I should have, at that time, I didn't feel like I could. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, why didn't you kind of force them? Yeah, right.
Well, they always say hindsight is 2020, which means looking back, you understand, you could have done all these different things, but when you're going through it, it's a lot harder to figure out. But looking back, you can see, I should have done this, that, and the other. Exactly. So that's kind of part of what we're doing at Signs of Good Food. It's not just cooking, but also talking about the experience of deaf chefs and restaurants, exposing others, both deaf and hearing audience to that, and to help normalize deaf people in those spaces so that deaf people can advocate for themselves and know what they can do in those different situations. Or, while a hearing chef may have an idea of how to accommodate their deaf staff, it seems like you've worked with good chefs that have a lot of mutual respect and are not like deflating. They just are very respectful. And that's empowering. When you can work with someone who has that mutual respect, then wow, you can succeed just obviously like you did. I mean, look at your life. Because you've had that experience, you were able to succeed. Yeah. And I would love to have that for all deaf people. That's not always true. Yeah, you're right. Like, do you go to schools or colleges and present or... Yeah, I'm open to that. We did a video chat with a Texas school last spring. I gave them my experience, my journey, and then we made empanadas with them. Oh, yeah. That sounds fun. Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Those kids were so excited to do something. Oh, and I'm sure most deaf kids don't think, I can become a chef. I can become a cook. I can, that actually has been a change in the last 10 or 20 years. For example, 20 or 30 years ago, maybe a tiny handful of deaf chefs. But now, with social media, there's deaf cooks and deaf chefs and home cooks everywhere. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so excited to see the development of that and what that will become in the future, Social media is a wonderful tool in that arena, but in other ways it's not. There's positives and negatives, but that's with everything, So not just social media, but everything. With food even, there's positives and negatives. You can eat too much and you'll gain too much weight. Well, you know what I mean. So at Anne's Arbor, we initially started to help single moms or others who are in need. And I always like to end each interview with a question. Do you have a specific organization or group or something that is a passion project that you really would love to support? What is that for you? That's a great question. I applaud the work that you've done in that area, helping single moms. Thank you. I applaud that. They really need that. Thank you so much. My organization that has my heart really is Signs of Good Food, because we are building a business model. Okay, so you guys a nonprofit or a for-profit? Well, we're currently a for-profit, but we will add a nonprofit. We will like to add a nonprofit portion. Okay, so do you have a donate button or something on your website, or how can we support you in that? Great question. In our newsletter, we have a buy me a coffee type thing. Oh yeah. Or either we can do events. We provide serve safe tutoring. We have cooking mentoring. People that would like to learn to cook, they're able to reach out to us, and we'd love to work with them. That's incredible. Yeah, there are all these different ways. So, well, I am for sure going to be supporting you and spreading the word about Signs of Good Food because it's awesome. I am so impressed. Thank you. I know our time is running out, but I've enjoyed chatting with you so much. Thank you so much.